Okay, welcome everyone. Really good to see you guys with us. My name is Paul Newnham, and I am the coordinator for the Chefs Manifesto and the director of the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. And it's so great to have you all with us. And today we've got a real treat. We've got a great group of people coming, friends of the Chefs Manifesto from many different parts of the world. And a number of chefs speaking. And so it's going to be hopefully a really good, exciting conversation, really focused around how do we champion and work on biodiversity. So we're going to have on one hand, chefs and partners who hosted and produced the third season of the Chefs Manifesto podcast on resilient, diverse crops. And on the other hand, we're going to have the Future 50 Foods champions, and they're going to share some exciting new developments on this front. But before we kind of jump into that, I just want to start by just framing up a couple of things that are happening. 2021 is a really critical year for driving progress on the global goals. And there's a number of different events that we're going to hear about that are happening this year. One of them is that there's going to be a UN Food Systems Summit, which was called forward by the Secretary General. And it's designed to launch bold new actions to transform the way the world produces and consumes food. And this summit will be a turning point on our path to transform our food system. And we're super excited to see how that comes together. And so one of the things that we're doing as part of the Food System Summit, you can find out more about it online. You can follow along at UN Food Systems on Instagram, where there's been a number of chefs doing takeovers. So Chef Tom Hunt, who's speaking to us today, has done that. There's others that have been involved. Chef Justin was on there, Chef Arthur, there was Sammy, Mark Brand. There's been chefs from all over, and we've got others still coming. It's great to see so many chefs on here. So I'm seeing JB's on. We've got Hi from Helsinki, New Zealand. We've got Botanical Cuisine BA Honours student from Dublin. Good to see people from Mexico City joining, from Nairobi, from the UK, from the Philippines, from Ireland, from Hong Kong, from Germany, from Haiti, from New Delhi, from Alberta. So many. It's so great to see so many different people from around the world joining with us now. So what I was saying was there is one of the things we're doing this year is we're taking a leading role around furthering our work around the SDGs. And if you've on our mailing list, you would have seen that we've just launched this thing called the Chef's Pledge. And the Chef's Pledge is really looking at how do we ask chefs around the world to have their say around the actions that can drive forward change around in this decade of action. And so what we're doing is we're actually looking at the action plan from the Chefs Manifesto. We've invited other chef networks from James Beard Foundation to Cordon Bleu London to Social Gastronomy to the World Chef Association to Good Food Fund China, others in there, to really come together as one voice to drive action on the SDGs. And so what we're looking at is what are the key practical actions that can drive forward change? And then we're going to be asking scientists to also look at them and then having discussions over the coming months in the lead up to the summit to really think about how we can create a pledge for chefs to make later in the year. And so if you haven't checked it out, go to the chefsmanifesto.com, check out the link. Make sure you fill in the survey, tell other chefs about it. There's going to be more coming on that. But today we're really going to focus on one area of our work, and it's going to be talking a little bit about biodiversity. And so within biodiversity, there's a couple of things. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to hear from the team from Future 50 Foods a bit later on what's going on there, about World Eat for Good Day, which is at the end of this week, and how you can get involved. And I'll let Dorothy and others tell you a little bit more about it, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. But we're also going to hear a bit about the Chefs Manifesto podcast season 3 on crops. And this was a partnership that we did with the Crop Trust. And so we're going to hear a little bit from the presenters. So this time we've had 2 other presenters join Chef Tom Hunt. So Chef Lorna Maseko and Chef Alejandra Schrader have joined as hosts. And we're halfway through this season. And if you've been listening along, it's been great to kind of hear about different crops and have a bit of a deep dive. And so a little bit later, we're going to hear a bit more from the hosts on some of their thoughts, and also from our partner from the Crop Trust and Food Forever, Rodrigo, and he's going to talk a little bit about why they partnered with us on this piece of work. But in terms of just starting and warming us up, so biodiversity is absolutely critical, and to the way that the foods we eat and the way we consume and the plates that we create to achieve this food system transformation and good food for all. And it's one of the big focuses in the Chefs Manifesto in thematic area 2 of our action plan. And so we really wanted to follow up on some of the work that we did last year and talk a bit more about it. But before we dive into the 2 panels that we've got and the discussions, it's my honor to kind of welcome the Eat Science Director, Fabrice De Clerk, who's here with us today. And most of you will know Fabrice. He's been at our Action Hub events, he's been at a number of events and been a good friend to the manifesto and to our community. And he really is, we asked him just to jump in. He's in the middle of lots of things, so he can't even stay for the whole time, I don't think, but he's going to stay as long as he can. But I just asked if he could come and set the scene for today's discussions and really just give us an overview of all things biodiversity from past, present, and future. And so I'm going to hand over to you, Fabrice, and if you can take it away and give us a little bit of a snapshot to set us up.
Thanks, Paul. It's great to see you all. I'm laughing because biodiversity's past, Paul, is 4 billion years of evolution. So that's a long past to cover in 4 minutes. But so it's really tremendous to see all of you today. And I think, the work that you're doing, particularly to spotlight biodiversity, really can't be underemphasized. What makes this planet unique is that's the only place that we know that has life. This week we've been hearing in the news about these new missions to Mars, and even some headlines saying this is the next best bet after Earth. I don't know if people realize just how crazy that is of an idea. It's a much better bet to think about how we safeguard and create space for biodiversity where we are now. Right now, the fact of the matter is that life on Earth is very much threatened. It's threatened by our continuing disregard for life in general. Disregard for more than 4 billion years of evolution that has created not just these cute, cuddly, charismatic species, but really it's created living conditions that allows us to thrive, the choices that we get to enjoy every day. As Paul mentioned, this is a really big year, not just for food, but also for biodiversity. We're going to start out in May, unless the date's being changed, with the Convention of Parties on Biodiversity, which will meet in Kunming, China. This is the group of national governments which are setting the targets for biodiversity conservation and use over the next 10 years. This is the second time that we do this. We had the Aichi biodiversity targets, which conclude this year. And the bad news is that we failed to meet the majority of the biodiversity goals. We really need to get it right this year. We need to put goals that are comprehensive. We need to put goals that stop extinction loss, but we also need to put in goals that recognize that biodiversity is not just something to conserve, but it's something to use. So that convention in May is going to be critical in setting the ambition of the next decade. Paul mentioned the UN Food Systems Summit, which will have its first meeting in July, its final meeting to launch the work on food in September. There's a growing community that is very busy trying to unpack what are game-changing solutions around that summit. But what I particularly like about the Food Systems Summit is that it's really the first time that I've seen the different UN agencies, World Health, Food and Agriculture, Environment Program, Development Program, beginning to really work together and understand where are the places that they have synergistic opportunities and where are some of the real rubs. So there's an action track on healthy food. There's an action track on healthy and sustainable consumption led by Gunhild. There's an action track on nature positive production, which realizes that agriculture can work with, not against nature. One on integration and bringing in and making sure that everyone is able to participate, and a third one on resilience. This is fundamentally the decade that we make, or the year that we make big decisions on what will define this decade. And each of these will be an opportunity to test whether we can bend the curve on biodiversity loss. You guys play a fundamental role in this. My colleagues and I, with our nerdy models, really are challenging the notion that it's food production, food security, or conservation. And we find actually that we can meet both goals, but that it takes more than setting aside protected areas. We're going to set a target for 30% protected this year. But the only way that we can do that is by changing how we produce and how we consume food. So again, you play a huge role here. How we produce food, when we talk about ecosystems, we often think about forests, wetlands, and prairies. And the truth is that agricultural ecosystems really now are the world's biggest ecosystem. We just have failed to treat them as ecosystems. And I think by shifting our mindset and recognizing that nature isn't just something that is protected, but is what drives life on Earth. It's the source of regular climate. It's a source of clean water. And for you guys, it's the source of the flavors, the nourishment, and the diversity of ingredients that you use in your food. Biodiversity really is much more of a functional concept rather than just a strictly conservation concept. I know that quite often biodiversity can be really complicated. So I'd like to use a really simple reminder to try to provide you with, I think, some mental notes on how you might address this. So biodiversity conservation is an art, A, 3 R's, and T. And you guys are all artists, so hopefully this resonates with you. So A is avoid. The biggest challenge for food production of this next decade is avoiding the conversion of intact nature into agriculture. What foods we eat, how we produce it, where we produce it, how much we lose in waste determines whether or not we can keep at least half of the planet intact. That's today's status quo. Half of the terrestrial landscape is intact. And if we're going to stop extinction, and if we're going to be able to regular climate, we need to keep that half intact. The R's are restore, reduce, and regenerate. Restore intact nature where we can, reduce our impact on nature where possible, primarily by reducing the use of pesticides, insecticides, biocides, which threaten biodiversity in many places. And the third R, the most exciting, I think, is regenerate. And that is remembering that agricultural ecosystems can be places not only where we produce food, but where we produce better food, and where we also produce many environmental goods and services. Store climate, keep habitat for pollinators and pest controlling organisms, improve water quality. The last letter, T, in our art sequence is transform. And here, I think you play a particularly important role. How do we transform our food systems and our plates in support of diversified, healthy diets? So our challenge for biodiversity is to bring art back into it. And I'm counting on you to be a part of that. I'm reminded by Dorothy's book on the 50 future foods that the French chef Jean-Alphonse Savarin said that the discovery of a new dish does more for happiness of the human race than the discovery of a star. I've got some really good news for you. My colleagues, and Roland is part of that, have estimated that there are more than 10,000 edible foods globally. My Harvard colleagues are flagging out there's more than 3,000 blue foods waiting to be discovered and used. These are your exponential pantries, to which I hope we can contribute to exponential happiness as we embark on this challenge to protect, safeguard, and most importantly, use biodiversity as a tool to achieving health and sustainability. Looking forward to the conversation, and thanks for having me with you.
Thank you, Fabrice. I love that art, and I love the real challenge that you're giving us here. Biodiversity is so important for chefs because it creates the pantry that creates the ingredients to not only create delicious food, but also solve challenges of the future, and to solve problems and to bring attention to things that we can drive action on. And so it's really important for us to prioritize that, to understand it, and to learn from that, and to share that knowledge around the world. And it's so great to see so many chefs and advocates from around the world on this call. There's so many. I was just looking through the chat and just seeing where people are from, and there's just a real spread all the way around. And I think this is really important, and it shows that diversity. And this is really critical for us to drive action forward. So let's jump straight in. So just talking a little bit about this podcast. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. We'll put the links in and into the chat. But the third season of the Chefs Manifesto podcast was created as a resource to really help chefs to share stories of action on sustainable development tied to the UN SDGs. And this season, we really looked at 6 episodes that are currently launching each Monday morning. And so if you are subscribed, you'll get them. But if not, go to the links there and sign up. We'd love if you go there and give us a like or something. That really helps, as you know, on the algorithms behind the scenes. If all of a sudden people start liking something, it helps work on pushing it up the charts on many platforms. But what we've really done on this platform is we partnered very closely with the Crop Trust to really collaborate and really talk about the Crop Trust work on biodiversity. And what we did was we looked at different stories around the history and the significance of crops, and how each of them has the potential to support the transformation of our food system. And as I mentioned, we had 3 amazing chefs host this season. And so there was Chef Alejandra Schrader, who unfortunately can't join us, but we've recorded, and we'll hear from her in just a minute. She can't be live, but we've got live Chef Tom Hunt and Chef Lorna Maseko, and so it's going to be great to have them on it in a minute. And then also Rodrigo Barrios from the Crop Trust to chat about this collaboration. So what I wanted to just let you all know is that we're also going to be adding alongside these podcasts a series of case studies, and these case studies will be able to be downloaded, to be able to be printed or used on a device, to be able to dig deeper. And they share different resources, different information, and they accompany the podcasts. And they've got in-depth interviews, relevant statistics, and calls to action. So I just want you to look out for them. They'll come out soon. But we're going to just dive straight in, and I'm going to go across to LA to a conversation with Chef Alejandra, who was one of our hosts, before I welcome our panelists. So let's put the video on. Okay, welcome Alejandra. It's so good to see you. I want to first hand over to you and let you introduce yourself. Maybe could also share a little bit about how you got involved in the Chefs Manifesto and what areas you're particularly focused on in your work.
Absolutely. Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be involved with the Chefs Manifesto. My name is Alejandra Schrader. For those that don't know me, I'm based in Los Angeles, California. I am a plant-based nutrition certified chef. I'm an author. My book, The Low Carbon Cookbook, is coming out this year. And I'm one of the founding members of the Chefs Manifesto. I've been involved from the very beginning, back when we were in that little loft in New York City, and we were brainstorming about what are those things that as chefs we need to be paying attention to help bring to life the Sustainable Development Goals. As a plant-based nutrition certified chef, I'm a huge advocate for focusing on plants and really trying to incorporate more plants into our diet, not just for human health, but for the environment, and also to really support seasonal ingredients as a way to support biodiversity and also the livelihoods of the people that are growing our food in our communities.
Absolutely. Super excited to hear more about your book at some stage. That sounds super interesting and something that we're going to have to all put on our reading list. But this was your first Chefs Manifesto podcast season that you joined as a host. You've been a guest before, but you joined as a host alongside Chef Tom Hunt and Chef Lorna Maseko, who also will be speaking at this event. Could you just share a bit about this journey, how this journey was for you, what you picked up from it, and maybe one takeaway?
It was great to have the opportunity to be involved in the Chefs Manifesto podcast, because it was a first one for me. I love to talk, so that part wasn't a problem, but it was I thought it was a great opportunity to connect with different people, from chefs to experts and scientists, about some of the crops that are really valuable for the promotion of biodiversity, which is such a big and important aspect to be touching upon, especially as chefs and champions, right, of the food industry. I had the opportunity to be the host of 2 episodes, which were the potato and the sorghum, which were fantastic for me and very appropriate. On one end, potato is like one of the most underappreciated crops in the world, such a humble ingredient, but so important for the food security and the nutrition of so many different communities, a lot of underprivileged communities throughout the world. Potato is also native to my side of the world, which is South America, and especially in Peru, and I've been personally able to do some of the work that I've done with like small farmers, ecological farmers, and small producers in Peru. I've traveled there, I've worked with them, I've seen the importance that they give to the crop of potato as a way to connect with Pachamama, what they call Mother Earth. There, at the time, little did at the time I learned that there were over 3,000, and this is what I'm hearing from the farmers. And then in one of the episodes of the Chef Manifesto, I hear that there are tens of thousands of varieties of potatoes. So why are we, especially here in America, why are we only eating 2 or 3 of them when there are so many to choose from? The other episode, being the sorghum episode, is very relevant because my father had a small sorghum farm in Venezuela. Sorghum is so ideal for the type of land and weather that we have near the equator. So it was a very resilient crop, and one that was very important for the indigenous people of the southern portion of Venezuela and the Amazon region. So I knew a lot about sorghum, but I also knew how little people knew about sorghum, and I was very excited to talk about it. And being able to talk to Chef Ali, and other chefs, but also champions, allowed me the opportunity to learn even more about the camel of crops, the sorghum. So it was such a great experience, and the conversations from doing the podcast were just fabulous.
Absolutely. I didn't realize that your family had farmed sorghum. That's awesome. That's so good. So, there were 6 delicious, diverse crops. We're talking a lot about biodiversity, and biodiversity is something that you obviously have championed. Why do you think it's so critical that we diversify our plates, and what's kind of something that you think is really important for us to champion at the moment in terms of crops?
Right. So biodiversity matters for so many different reasons. One of the most important ones have to do with environmental soundness and the climate crisis that we're undergoing. There's a reason why all of those crops were here on this earth. And the fact that we've lost so many of them have taken a toll in the soil, in the health of our soils, in our earth, or the planet's ability to absorb, nitrogen and carbon, and to create the dynamics that the environment was meant to fulfill to begin with. As a chef, it's boring to work just with, out of 40,000 edible plants, we're using 30, and only 3 really are feeding 60% of the humanity's calories. Like, we're not doing good enough, So the way I think about it is, with so much to eat, why are we settling for so little? But also then the fact about that biodiversity has to do with food security and ensuring that we continue to have the presence of some of these crops that are not only delicious and beautiful, but they're also so nutritious, right? So, even if we look at, we were just talking about potato, like a purple potato has so much more nutrients and phytochemicals important for the well-being of humans than a regular white potato does. And so the more that we are able to support biodiversity, the more that we're doing our part to help, deal and mitigate this climate crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Alejandra, I can't wait to re-listen to these podcast episodes. If you haven't listened to them, please get involved and check it out. Also, keep an eye out for Alejandra's new book coming out middle of the year. Is that right?
Yeah, it's around June, and there's 140 plant-based recipes. The purpose is to lose waste, to stop throwing away food, and combat climate change from our kitchens.
I can't wait to have a look at it. So thank you so much for joining us live from LA. Super excited to connect and listen to the podcast. So thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Alejandra, for making the time to chat with us. And yeah, really appreciate it. And if you haven't listened to the episodes with Alejandra, please check them out. It's good to see that some people have listened to them. It's good to see, Natalia, coffee's your favorite. And that the potato episode for you, Daniel, and others are going to be listening as they go for runs and stuff. Podcasts are great for that. And it's sometimes just, really, really good to just have a good list of podcasts. And so maybe also jump in there and share other podcasts that you listen to and that you really like, that you think others might be interested in. Feel free to add that to the chat. But let me bring in Rodrigo, Chef Lorna, and Chef Tom, and we're going to have a bit of a chat with you guys just around this. So thanks, guys. Good to see you all. Great to see you all. So I'm just going to dive straight in. I'm going to just start off with quick snapshot introduction. Like, who are you? Where are you based? And what do you do with the majority of your day? So very, very short, quick answers. Okay, let's go. Lorna first.
Hi, everybody. I am Lorna Maseko from South Africa. I'm a celebrity chef here, a cookbook author, a proud member of the Chefs Manifesto, and it's absolutely amazing to be part of this panel.
Thanks, Lorna. Over to you, Tom.
Hi there. I'm Eco Chef Tom Hunt. I'm based in London, and I'm a whole food, plant-led, zero-waste chef, author of Eating for Pleasure, People and Planet, and original kind of podcast host for the Chefs Manifesto.
Thanks, Tom. And Rodrigo.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. My name is Rodrigo Barrios. I am originally from Peru, but I'm based in Bonn in Germany. And I am a strategic partnerships manager from the Crop Trust, which was one of the co-leaders behind this third season of the Chefs Manifesto podcast.
So maybe let me just continue with you, Rodrigo. So this is the first podcast season that the Crop Trust has hosted in partnership with the Chefs Manifesto. How was the process for you? And I don't want to hear about like the back end, how hard these guys were to deal with. I want you to tell us a little bit about what's the process been like.
No, I mean, I guess our partnership with the Chefs Manifesto and the SDG2 Advocacy Hub goes now, we can say, way back, at least 2 years. For us, the partnership with you guys has been crucial because although it for us is even evident the importance that safeguarding all of this amazing wealth and biodiversity within our foods has, for a lot of people, actually, it isn't. And a lot of people actually don't figure all the science that exists behind. And usually scientists that work either in gene banks or in the field safeguarding all of these different varieties are to a large extent siloed and are operating only in scientific and research circles. So for us, this podcast season was actually very illuminating and exciting because for the first time we saw scientists in our network speaking about the recipes they cook and chefs with whom we have worked for quite some time now speaking about the science behind the crops, because many of them are also to some extent scientists and apply the science as well while growing their vegetables. So I think it was actually a kind of for us like a bridge sort of season between what we're trying to do, exciting the audience with, of course, the amazing power of chefs, but also bringing the science to the discussion and somehow finding common ground. So I think it's a great season and encourage you all to see it. It has a lot of very good content.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Rodrigo. And it's great to partner with you. And I think it is really interesting to see that interaction. I'll jump over to you, Tom. Tom, you've been on board since the first season of the podcast. How did the seasons compare for you, and what were some of the highlights of this one?
So, I mean, it's just over a year since or under a year since we published our first episode, and it seems like a long time ago now, with the whole pandemic emerging and everything. But it's been a really steep learning curve. I mean, Paul, none of us had made a podcast before, so we had to start from scratch, didn't we? We started kind of with the drawing board, kind of working out what we wanted our concept to be and the format for the show. And we enlisted the help of a podcast studio. And I feel like we managed to create a really kind of polished product from the outset that has helped to galvanize chefs and experts and people from all around the world on this very important conversation. Season 2 was kind of like, okay, COVID's happened, and it was a bit more reactionary, and we wanted to kind of talk to people in the moment and see where they were at. And then this season, as a collaboration, has again been another transformation. Yeah. And it's been really helpful to be able to have the list of experts that the Crop Trust has access to, and for them to be able to connect them with us as the host, but also then, of course, our audience. And there's been many highlights. I mean, we've spoken to some incredible people. I mean, in season 1, we started out with Gerda Verberg, the UN Assistant Secretary General, and that was just phenomenal, being able to sit down virtually with her to discuss the importance that we have as chefs and our role within this kind of bigger picture. But then, I mean, leaping forward to this season, I'm really interested in seed saving. And so I'm interested in the kind of seed vault in Svalbard. So speaking to Dr. Schrader, the Director of Horticulture at the Center of Global Initiatives at Denver Botanic Gardens, was particularly intriguing for me. And I learned something from every single person we interviewed, from whether it was a chef or an expert, but it was great to hear from her, and also kind of learn how, although we survive with a worryingly small genetic diversity of plant species, the Crop Trust are preserving our biodiversity in these seed banks and field gene banks, so that we can essentially kind of survive if anything happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Lorna, this was your first time hosting the Chefs Manifesto podcast. How was that kind of experience and the journey in that process? Like, how did you find it? What did you learn from that?
It was absolutely amazing, just because I got to speak to different chefs and scientists from around the world, essentially. India, Mozambique, some Chef Mahadi as well. And to just discover what people are doing around the world with these crops and biodiversity is so encouraging. And for me, it's always just been about trying to get the word out there. As I learn, I try and educate the people in my circle, in my community. And I think that's what it's about. I think those kinds of conversations are so important to have, but most importantly, for us to then take action from having these conversations. So to also allow these crops to be more commercialized, not in a way that obviously, doesn't benefit farmers or small scale farmers, but in a way that the average person who's doing, who loves food or a foodie is able to have access to them. And I think those things are very important. And so, speaking to Chef Vanishka from India and what she's doing, speaking to the scientists from Mozambique and the different sweet potatoes that they have, and how many years they've invested in studying this amazing crop. And so it's been very, very insightful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lorna. And look, if you're listening and you want to ask these guys a question, there is a Q&A box. If you look down there, it says Q&A and it's got 2 little spots. if you want to throw a question in, we will try and answer it live if we've got time. And if not, we'll also just get in there and write, we'll ask the guys to jump in and write. So if you want to ask Lorna something, or Tom or Rodrigo, you can ask your question and they can either type it in afterwards, or we can try and answer it now. So there is that chance there. So Rodrigo, so the Crop Trust, we've talked a bit about the mission of the Crop Trust, but it's really around ensuring the conservation and availability of crop diversity for food security worldwide. And Tom referenced that. From your perspective, can you just talk a little bit more about what role chefs play in this process? And how do you think that this kind of approach of a crop series can really help support the mission of the Crop Trust?
Sure, that's a very good question. So I think Fabrice really laid well the framework of the topics that we're discussing. When we speak about biodiversity at large, we're speaking about 4 billion years of evolution. When we're speaking about the work that we do is a specific set of biodiversity, which is the biodiversity in our crops. And that has more or less 10,000 years. But 10,000 years still offers a huge amount of diversity and a huge amount of options. And in a crucial year like this, where we're discussing so many things, also in the context of the UN Food System Summit, and there are so many pressing issues like food security, land degradation, changing climate that are happening today, it is easy for us to lose the long-term perspective. And the Crop Trust is all about the long-term perspective. So we work to safeguard all of this astounding varieties of crops so that we have them in the future. Of course, the benefit of this in the future, in 50 years and 100 years, is to have options to survive. That, of course, is the raw importance of the mission. But in reality, and we have seen this through Chef Alejandra Schrader and through all the guests in the podcast, crops, the biodiversity and the choice in the future is not only about resilience and survival, is also about the emotional connection that we have with all these crops. For Alejandra, it was sorghum or potatoes. For me as well, I have a strong connection with potatoes because I come from Peru. All of us are fond of the foods that we eat in a way that transcends just the pure survival element of food. So bringing on chefs actually helps trigger in all of the people, individuals, organizations, companies, that sense of the importance, not only from a scientific and natural perspective, but the importance from an emotional perspective to really ensure that all of these foods exist forever. As much as we're vying towards ensuring that the wildlife and pandas and elephants exist forever, we also want the plethora of different varieties of crops that integrate our favorite dishes and our favorite memories to exist forever as well. So I think chefs play a crucial role in really triggering this emotional, cultural aspect of things that I think makes people act sometimes even more so than science.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that emotional element is something that I know is often missing in some of these big global events that happen, because it's very scientific, it's very health driven, it's about kind of meeting scientific targets, but it forgets that food is cultural. It connects to us. It's part of our story. It's about love. It's how we express that. And there's so many elements that come into food that are at that emotional level. Lorna, so out of the crops that we discussed, this was all about resilient biodiverse crops that are good for people and planet. Was there one out of the 6 that you kind of felt a connection to, or that was highlighted? Maybe one that you did the interview on, but it might have been you were like, I really wanted to do that one, that somebody else did. Tell us, was there a one of the ingredients that connected to you and your thinking?
I think most of them were quite amazing as I did some research, but for me, I think obviously millet, because I learned so much from all the different people I was chatting to. And of course, I spoke to Chef Megha about millet and how it's, been grown in Africa and it grows well in Africa. And that was really, really interesting to see what different chefs were doing around the world with these crops. Some were baking, some were, making cakes. I was just like, wow, I should definitely try those recipes. And I think the sweet potatoes. So I think the ones that I spoke about or hosted are the ones that I learned a lot about, which was quite interesting for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Tom, you did hosted the episodes on coffee and wheat. What's one thing that you learned and something that inspired you to do something different in your kitchen?
Yeah, I mean, both were in kind of infinitely interesting as subjects. I was particularly inspired by Professor Filippo Bassi, who works in Morocco at the International Centre for Agricultural Research in the Dry Areas. So he's developing climate resilient varieties of durum wheat from ancient grains. And I mean, there's something particularly romantic as a chef and food lover about the notion of ancient grains and thinking about those original crops, the foundation crops that really kind of helped found our civilization. And it's inspiring to know that scientists are using that ancient genetic material to really kind of merge that ancient technology with modern technology to create these kind of climate resilient crops that we can use now. So, I mean, I'm always inspired to try and work with new varieties of wheat and different grains, and so that just kind of furthered that passion. Also, speaking to Chef Daniel Kaplan on the coffee episode, he was inspiring with his ideas for how to use coffee in food. He suggests that it goes really well with barbecue, so you can add used coffee grounds into your barbecue sauces, or you can use them to rub meat and then barbecue them. They also they make an infusion with coffee that they spray one of their cakes with at the end of each cooking process, and before they just kind of serve it out. It sounds absolutely delicious.
Awesome. So there was one question here. So for Lorna and or Tom, what was one point from the podcast you worked on that you feel is essential takeaway for chefs in regards to biodiversity? So we don't have a huge amount of time, but do you want to jump in and share your thoughts? So what's one point from the podcast you worked on that was an essential takeaway for chefs with regards to biodiversity?
I think, I'll go. I think for me, it was about using these crops. A lot of people don't have accessibility to find millet. Okay, sweet potato, we only have one type, and then you'll have one store that brings in different varieties. And so for me, it was that we need to allow people to have these crops or to have this produce easily accessible to them. I think that was definitely a highlight. And also then to say, you know, most of the scientists were saying, like, let the chefs explore, you know, try different things. Like, I love what Tom was saying with the coffee podcast, with spraying the coffee on the cake, I think he said. But it's about making sure that these crops are accessible to everyone and not just in certain countries or certain people.
Yeah, no, I think that accessibility is really key, because I think sometimes, you know, we can have kind of ideals around how we do things, but then, you know, it's very hard to get them out there. And so I think that's something that's really interesting. There's lots of chefs that are working on that and championing different ingredients in different parts of the world and trying to get them into menus. But then it's also, how do we take them to scale? How do you make them accessible to everyone? And that's always challenging. Tom, did you want to say anything on that?
No, just that I agree, really. I mean, it's just so important for us to tap into this diversity of ingredients and support agrodiversity. And that's just what this whole series clarified. Yeah.
Well, thank you, guys. Look, it's good to check in with you guys and chat. Obviously, you can, if you want to, everyone can listen to Lorna and Tom on the podcast. There's more episodes coming out every Monday. Let us know what you think. Please go on, put a comment, let us know other crops. Maybe we can convince Rodrigo to do some more episodes with us and another season, and we can do another 6 crops sometime. But please get on there and share them. It's great to be partnering together on this. And so just want to say thank you to you guys, including Alejandra and team, for really getting on board and just diving in and talking with the scientists and really asking the right questions, because it's definitely interesting to listen to. I've listened to some of them a few times over, and I'm still picking up things. So I appreciate it, and thank you. So really appreciate it.
Well,
thanks, guys. Cool. Okay, so we're going to continue on into the next part of our conversation, and it really feeds a little bit on from what Lorna mentioned. Lorna was talking about how these foods are accessible, and one of the other partners that we've worked with is Future 50 Foods. So it's done by Unilever and Knorr. And Dorothy, who is a key part of the creation team of Future 50 Foods that was developed and launched just under 2 years ago with WWF. And the Chefs Manifesto was at Eat Forum, and we were able to help really hear about it, and then also really engage with it and understand, what do these 50 foods mean, and how do they help drive action around people and planet. And there's many chefs, and we're going to hear from Chef Megha and Chef Chantelle shortly, a little bit more around how they've used this in their kitchen. But we were really surprised and by the engagement across the chef world with just this simple idea of putting 50 foods on a list and saying, here's 50 foods we should be eating more of. And it really comes into this idea of 60% of all our calories are coming at the moment from 4 crops, and that we really have a very not very diverse diet, and we need to increase the number of those crops. And so partnering with groups like Knorr and Unilever on this kind of project like Future 50 Foods has seen things like this cookbook, which came together, and there's a number of chefs. I think Tom and Justin and others have got some recipes in here, but just trying to get these foods into practical ways for people to engage. And so I'm going to invite Dorothy just to give us a little update on what's going on around Future 50 Foods, but also to tell us a little bit about this idea of Eat for Good Day, and what that's about, and how we can get involved. So Dorothy, if you want to flick on your camera, and then I'll hand over to you.
Yes, just a second. I need to turn my camera on. I can't anymore, I think, because
I just go with it. We can see it.
Okay, good. You did it.
Yeah. Perfect.
Can you see me now?
I can see you.
And can you see my slides?
I can see your slides.
So, super.
Perfect. Go for it.
Great. And I will get on my way.
Just introduce yourself.
I will. Hi, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you today to share with you one of the next steps on our journey. So you may have heard that Friday, the 19th of February, is World Eat for Good Day. Now, you also might wonder why we're having another day. So I'll talk to you about that as well. So I'm Dorothy Shaver. I sit in the Unilever brand team, and I focus on sustainability. I have a background as a dietitian and in public health, and focusing very much on food system sustainability within Unilever in all of the brands. And today I'll focus on Knorr. So first of all, I also want to thank a lot of you for all of your fantastic support of Future 50 Foods, of the concept of the foods, of getting them out there through your menus, through your restaurants, through your love of them, through the flavor of them, and of course, through the cookbook and other things that we've done together. So 2 years ago, on the 19th of February, so the 19th of February was very strategically chosen, as you can imagine, and that's because it's the 2-year anniversary of Future 50 Foods. So 2 years ago, we launched Future 50 Foods, and since then, we've actually gained credibility as a brand across NGOs, across policymakers, across even government have reached out to us. Many, many chefs have really been involved and supported it. Our retailers are very into it. Our partners and experts are very supportive of it. It got into a variety of different pieces. Almost 6 billion pieces of information went out there to the media without us paying anything in media. So we had no paid media. It reached over 90 countries. So I'm happy to say that through Future 50 Foods, we've gotten these wonderful foods into menus, as I said, into many of our products, into many of our recipes, our promotions. We've worked with WWF and Sodexo to get it onto 10,000 kitchen menus across the world. And we've done a variety of different things through the cookbook and so on and so forth. I'm sorry to say that we haven't gotten these foods on many plates, and we haven't gotten these foods to be more well-known. Yes, it's only been 2 years, but no, we don't have an excuse. It's now time to get those foods out there onto the plates of billions. And that's what this is all about. And the reason behind that are no reasons that I need to tell you because you've just said them. But the one that I like the most is the exponential flavors for exponential happiness. And the quote that Fabrice said is one of my absolute favorite quotes in the world. And I think this is what we can do together. I think we can make people exponentially happy. We can make the planet really happy, and we can make people's palates really happy through Future 50 Foods and really getting them on the plate. And that's what we intend to do. So World Eat for Good Day is all about making Future 50 Foods famous. Not from the brand perspective by any means. You won't see the brand many places. You won't see the role of the brand many places clearly. I'll tell you what the role of the brand is though. What you will hopefully see is through your whole news feed, you'll see recipes that swap 1 to 2 ingredients over to foods that are better for us and better for the planet. What you'll hopefully see is down the line, these foods will be more accessible, as Lorna said, because the retailers will learn about them. What you'll hopefully see is more farmers are growing these foods in sustainable ways. More farmers are growing a wider variety of foods because we've grown the demand. So when we, as a brand, use our reach across 90 countries, across more than 400 million households that we're in every year, across approximately 1.5 billion plates we're on every year, with 3.1 billion products sold every year, we hope that through our thousands of recipes and all of the partners and the chefs and the people that we've convened, we can change the world by changing what's on people's plates. And that is exactly the intention of World Eat for Good Day. And that's the role of Knorr. The role of Knorr is to bring everybody to the table, as we always have. And the role of Knorr is to hopefully add that flavor that people need in Future 50 Foods to make them taste good. So what we need to do together on World Eat for Good Day and further is grow the demand of these foods by helping people make small changes. And we all need to do that together. We heard from Lorna that these foods need to be more accessible, so we need to get them into the retailers. The only way to get them into the retailers is to get people to demand them. We need to get them on menus. You know that most people actually try new foods outside of their home. Now, I know that's very limited now because not a lot of us are going outside of our homes, but we do takeout, and we do get inspiration from all of you wonderful chefs around the world. So when you put these foods on your plates, on your menus, in your kitchens, you'll inspire billions to put them on their plates at home. And that's what we need to do, because that's what will change the system. But we need to do this together to create this movement. So a brand our size can do a lot, but we can't do it alone, and we don't want to do it alone. We need all of you. We need the Fabrices of the world to tell us what it means from a scientific perspective and give us a steer to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. We need all of you chefs to make these foods taste good, to make them be foods that people want to eat and people can eat. And that's what we intend to do as we move forward. So far, we have been able to get Future 50 Foods into lots of cookbooks, onto lots of menus through a lot of you. But what we haven't done is we don't see them in a lot more retailers. And we don't see them in a lot more mainstream menus. And that's exactly what we need to do together. So on World Eat for Good Day, what Knorr will do is, I have to admit that this isn't my comfort zone, and maybe it's not yours either, but the media that we're reaching out to for World Eat for Good Day is far different than the media we reached out to for Future 50 Foods. So I will say we did send a cookbook and a plate of hope, which many of you will get, which is a plate made out of degraded soil, to to Daily Mail and to The Guardian. So those are some of the many outlets that we're reaching to. And the reason is We want to reach consumers exactly where they are. And that is the whole intention of this campaign. It's about us saying, as a big mainstream brand, let's meet people where they are. I can't tell you who our partners and influencers are because it's confidential, but on Friday you'll see that it's very much aimed to make Future 50 Foods mainstream. You'll see through a fabulous film that I'm happy to share with you after this. I can just put the link to all of the assets and you can view them yourselves. Is an amazing film with real people in real homes cooking real food and swapping one ingredient for a Future 50 food. And when everybody does that, we can make a major impact on people's health and on the planet. We know that making changes is extremely hard. And that's why through our recipes, our tips, our influencers, we'll make simple swaps. So in Taco Tuesday, we'll change iceberg lettuce to spinach. In beef stew, we'll change half of that beef to beans. And it's simple things like this. It's not a whole new recipe. It's not confusing ingredients. It's these simple swaps that we need to help people make so that they can make small changes to make a big difference in the end. We'll also be talking about the importance of using a whole plant, like using the beet greens, and like Tom said, using the coffee grinds, and really reaching out to make sure that we're using the whole plant every time. So that is the intention of World Eat for Good Day. It is 2 years on from Future 50 Foods on purpose. When we launched Future 50 Foods, the intention was for people to eat more of those foods, to have a wider variety of foods for biodiversity reasons and other reasons, to eat less meat and more plants, to take less resources from the planet, and of course to eat more vegetables for the health of ourselves, and also to grow more vegetables, taking up far less land, emitting far less greenhouse gas emissions than other foods. And that is the same intention of World Eat for Good Day, from a very consumer-facing, hopefully really cool perspective. So we're asking you to get involved, and I will provide you with content. So as I said, you're more than welcome to use our assets. I think that we have really cool assets this year, I'm going to admit. I don't always think that, but we really do. So we have a few things that you can do to get involved. One is, of course, call on people to change their plate by you demonstrating on your social media feed, in a video, in a picture, however you want to do it, to make a simple change for a big impact on health and the planet. Also, we have turned Future 50 Foods into these really cool little cartoony illustrations, which you're welcome to have. So I can share those with you as well. It will be in the link I'll put in the chat. You can use those and you can use them in an asset, but they're really, really cool. You can try one of our future-proof recipes. You probably don't have to because I think you can make your own, but you're welcome to, of course, try ours and provide us with suggestions on how to improve or swap them. And also we have this really cool way to make yourself into a selfie with a veggie in front of your face. So we're hoping that that is seen in a lot of the social channels as well. We also have a really fun Snapchat game where you eat Future 50 Foods. And when you eat a non-Future 50 Foods, points get deducted. When you eat a Future 50 Foods, you get points, and then it teaches you about it. So really cool consumer-facing stuff with these foods. But we've pulled together something super special for you in the Chefs Manifesto, knowing that you've been a fabulous partner with us along the way. And we really, really, really see you as the rock stars behind Future 50 Foods, the magicians behind getting these foods onto people's plates. So we are calling you to please, please, please get involved. What we want you to do, and you can do it from the 19th of February all the way until the 28th of February. So you have 2 weekends to do it so that you have some time. You don't have to do it on the 19th. If you want to, you can do it as many times as you want. So the idea is you create a dish or recipe with a Future 50 Foods swap. So it can be a Future 50 Food recipe, absolutely great, but a swap would be even better to show the impact of making that swap. Post it on your social media using hashtag Eat for Good and Chefs Manifesto so we can find it. And then take a screenshot, save it, and email it to knorreatforgood@golin.com. We will then choose one to win a MacBook Air, and we'll send it to your home. You don't need to use any of our assets. You don't need to use the Knorr hashtag. We'd love for you to use a Knorr product if you'd like to, but it's not necessary. The idea is for us together to create a movement to get people all over the world to eat more Future 50 foods by making them accessible, desirable, and cookable. And you are all over all three of those pillars. So I hope that we can work together to get it that way. So hopefully you'll join us on the day and going forward to help the world eat for good. And I know that you do that every day. So the intention is to change the world by changing what's on your plate. So you can go to knorreatforgood.com. You'll see what's on there. You can reach out to me for more information. I'll put the assets in the chat here, and hopefully I will see your fabulous posts on the 19th all the way until the 28th and hopefully beyond. So this is a long-term partnership that we're building with you guys that we've had for a while that will continue throughout the year to get people to eat for good. So thank you so much for your time. I hope that you join us, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Dorothy. And stay around. I'm going to bring Megha and Chef Chantelle to join us, and we're going to have a bit of a chat. Hi, Chantelle.
Good. They were with us last week as well. So nice to see you, Chantelle and Megha. So Chantelle and Megha were with us last week. They did a fabulous cooking demo for the 900 plus Knorr employees, and the employees were absolutely amazed with all the tips and tricks. And hopefully you'll come back and teach our chefs to be like you guys.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Chantelle, Megha, do you want to introduce yourselves? Where are you guys based? And Dorothy, you can stay on and be a part of this conversation if you want. But Chantelle, Megha.
Okay, I'm here.
Who wants to go first?
Megha does.
Megha.
Hello everyone, I'm Megha and I'm a representative of the Chefs Manifesto and a Future 50 Foods champion, as I've been called. So yeah, I've been a chef for 13 years from New Delhi in India, and I've been a part of the Chefs Manifesto for about 2.5 to 3 years now, and I'm really excited to be here. I champion sustainability, eating local and seasonal produce, and biodiversity are the 3 areas that I champion, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome, awesome. And Chantelle?
Hi, I'm Chantelle. I am a chef based in London. I'm actually at my closed restaurant today. And I guess my focus is, hugely on biodiversity, regenerative agriculture, regenerative farming, also trying to encourage more vegetable eating, plant-based foods as well. And I've been part of the Chefs Manifesto pretty much since day one. So yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's just jump straight in. I mean, Megha, you've been a supporter and champion for Future 50 Foods from India since the very beginning. I know when you came to an event and you heard about Future 50 Foods, you raced back and then called me up and said, Paul, I've got a plan. And you had this ambitious plan, but can you just tell us a little bit about how you've been engaged and what you've done in the last 2 years since the launch, and why it kind of connects with you as a chef?
So I was introduced to the Future 50 Foods at the Eat Forum in Stockholm in 2019. And every day there was some discussion or the other on Future 50 Foods. And on the third day, I realized that so many of the Future 50 Foods are native to my country. And I felt that as citizens of India, we ourselves don't know how to use these Future 50 Foods. And they're traditionally made in a boring way, that they're just made at home, and we eat it how our moms and grandmoms cook it. And with the new generation focusing more on eating from outside and not really eating home cooked meals, restaurants weren't really championing any of these foods because no one was breaking the mold and thinking differently. And I remember I interrupted you in a discussion with someone else, Paul, and I just came up to you and I said that I need to talk to you right now. And I thought I should start a campaign of celebrating 2 Future 50 Foods for every month in my restaurant in New Delhi. And as I came back to India, I kind of developed more on the thought. So apart from just celebrating both the 2 different Future 50 foods every month. I also conducted workshops in my restaurant every month where I would where people could sign up and could attend and the workshops and learn how to cook with these Future 50 foods, because the idea was not just to popularize them for a month in my restaurant, it was to get them into people's homes. And if you ever ordered a Future 50 food dish from the menu, you would get a recipe card for the same dish that we would serve you in the restaurant, with a easier method of doing it, like a DIY on how you can just DIY this yourselves at home. Along with even on my social media, I used to share the suppliers' details, who was selling that Future 50 food, because I think a major struggle is when people get lazy and they're like, oh, it's not easily available. So where will I source it from? Let it be. So we shared the suppliers' details as well. And even in the lockdown, I have been sharing supplier details for the Future 50 foods, as well as with the discount code, that if people can use my name as a discount code and they'll get a discount. So just to like encourage more people to cook with these ingredients.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's
awesome.
My
story.
Awesome. And how did people respond to it in the restaurant?
People responded very well for some of the Future 50 foods. So like for stuff like sweet potato, people were really excited. For stuff like jicama, people were really excited. But the real challenge was cooking with Future 50 foods that are used in our homes every day. So something like lentils, which are like a very, very important part of the daily diet in India is lentil. So when we champion lentils on our menu, I had people asking me that why should I spend money on ordering lentils from your restaurant when my mom can make them at home. But then I had to explain to them that I'm doing it differently, and this lentil is nothing that you've ever had before, or these cowpeas are nothing like what you've had before in your homes. And many times when people were still apprehensive, I would just send a dish for free to their table. I would just be like, this is on me, just try it. And then they would be like, oh my God, this is so good, can we get the recipe? So even when people weren't ordering, because I had the prep for it anyways, so I would just send it to people's tables. Another ingredient that was very difficult to convince people to order was hemp, because somehow people think that hemp is equal to marijuana, so it's going to get you high, whereas that's not the case, and that's just a big myth that we needed to bust. And after I showcased hemp on my menu, the suppliers who was selling hemp called me up and told me after 2 months that they ran out of their stock of hemp that they had for 2 years because so many people ordered it. So yeah, that was a major win-win situation.
That's awesome. Chantelle, you've championed Future 50 foods in London as well through your restaurants. What's been the focus, and how did you bring the Future 50 foods onto your menu?
I think the focus for me was, I guess, trying to use more of them. And I think for me, a lot of what I do is trying to be local as possible, so as much British produce as possible. So working directly with Hodmy Dodds, which is a British grain and pulse grower. And so actually championing what they did. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that you could actually buy British grown grains and pulses. So I think to actually even be able to showcase that is really interesting. And I think naming things on menus sometimes as to where they come from, we do it with meat and fish, but we don't necessarily do it with vegetables or pulses or legumes. So I think that's quite important, just to, raise that awareness. And I think, sometimes I think, especially here in London, people kind of don't want to be preached at when they're eating out. So it's almost trying to find a way to subconsciously encourage it, I guess, like, what Megha did in terms of actually you get something with it. So it actually has a double benefit. So yeah, really trying to encourage people to enjoy them and actually understand that they're not, as Megha said, they're not kind of these boring things that are associated with kind of the hippies in the 70s, etc., that don't have any flavor or any texture to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see Vince is asking for you to post the supplier. So it's Hodny Dodds.
Sure.
And just because he's London-based as well and keen to obviously check that out. So that would be great. And I think this is one of the things, is getting access is sometimes a big challenge. Lorna raised that earlier, and that can be sometimes a really hard in certain parts of the world, and finding good quality product. And so you were able to find some of the foods, the Future 50 foods in London, no problems?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting because some of them have different names as well, based in where you are in the world. So sometimes it's a bit of a Google to figure out what's what. But I think there's so many that are kind of are slightly mainstream-ish now, I would say. Spelt is one that in the last few years has become a lot more popular than it was before, with spelt flour or spelt grains, spelt pasta. So, there's a lot of things that are being made from it now. So I think even people realizing that some of the things that they do use on a daily basis potentially are really great. So to try and, I guess, champion them and use more of them. Walnuts as well, which is one that, are also grown in the UK. So to actually just understand what those are and how to source them and get the most out of them, I think is also quite key. Yeah,
absolutely. Jumping across to you, Dorothy. So thanks for a really good presentation, and we're super excited for Eat for Good Day on Friday. And so just from your point of view, why is it so crucial to bring chefs and as many chefs in there to champion the Future 50 foods and swap out ingredients this year?
Yeah, so I think there's a variety of different reasons. One, the most important one, is that chefs know how to make foods taste good, look good, and smell good. And no matter how much we think people buy foods because of sustainability or health, taste remains king and queen. So if we don't have that, then we don't have anything. And that's, also, the role that hopefully Knorr can play as well, is helping people with that in a different way, really, with being a mass consumer brand. So that's one big way, is flavor. The other one, of course, is, accessibility, right? So when people see them on chefs' plates, on menus, in recipes, then it makes it easier for them to access them. It makes it feel like you can cook with those.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of what we want to do with Eat for Good Day and beyond is, first we want to start with these simple swaps. Like, I know you eat beef stew 4 times a week. So how about one of those days, you can swap out half the beef for beans or whatever. We found out that people make spaghetti bolognese in Germany, on average, family of 4, 3 times a week.
Wow.
And we did, so then we created a product where it used to be, it literally was just a mix for the seasoning of spaghetti bolognese with beef, and we just changed it to have lentils, and 90% of people changed it over to lentils. So, people will do it if you make it accessible. So, and we calculated, because you eat this 3 times a week, which is ridiculous, but we're not going to insult you, change 1, and this is the impact that you have. So also what chefs can do is to make it, something simple like that. And then later, once they're done, ready to move on from 3, maybe they move from 2 times a week to something else. And that inspiration very much comes from chefs. And I think the third piece is really around getting them onto menus and inspiring people to eat them at home. So as I said, the majority of people actually, don't eat a new food in their home because they're afraid of it. It's risky. They don't know how to cook it. So I absolutely love what Megha did with, making it in the restaurant, but then giving them a recipe to make it at home. And I think, there's so much more that can be done in that space and inspiring people to bring dishes home. And even if you can, imagine getting something delivered to your house, and in there is, a recipe card that says where the food's from and how you can make it yourself. I think that's absolutely a fantastic idea. So I think it's so important for us to work with chefs. It's so important for you guys to be profiled at this time when people really need you to help them with their millions of meals that they need to make at home. And also they need you to help them diversify, because if they don't feel like it's accessible, desirable, cookable, delicious, they're not going to make it. So when they see these aspirational people like chefs making them, they feel like, oh my gosh, okay, I can do this because they just gave me the tools, and I want to do it because it's so cool. So not to put a lot of pressure on you guys, but it's a lot on you to help the world kind of eat for good, I'd say, making those simple swaps first. And I think that's something to really work on, is how do we make it super simple? There's always time to show off, but how can we make it super simple for people to make these changes at home is really something that I think chefs can absolutely craft and master.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what you were saying, flavor and taste is so critical, and chefs really do engage in that. The other is cost and convenience, and sometimes we forget about cost and convenience. We're all busy, we all have budgets. We have to kind of look at what things cost and then how convenient they are. And it's nice to go and sit in a restaurant and enjoy a meal, but sometimes you can't do that, and not everyone in the world can. And so it's finding those ways to kind of make that accessibility. And so I think that's really key. Chantelle, we heard earlier from Fabrice about what's happening on biodiversity front and the key moments that are coming up. What would be your message to other chefs about why biodiversity is so crucial, and why initiatives like the Chefs Manifesto, Future 50 Foods are so important to drive positive change?
I think it's kind of, I guess from my perspective, it's a bit of a no-brainer. And I think it's, in a way, translating that. And I think with COVID happening, in a way, there's kind of, it sped things up and it slowed things down. I think just alluding to what you were saying about cost and convenience, actually, it's much cheaper to, put lentils in a dish as it is to put beef mince. Yeah. So, and I think people have been, I've been speaking to people lately that's, they've kind of gone eating a lot more vegetarian food because it's cheaper and they don't have the same income they had before. Yeah. So on that side, I think that's actually a positive. And I think for chefs on their menus, that's also a really great way to control costs as well. It's, just looking at how meat behaves versus how, vegetables and plants behave. It's a lot less risk involved. There's a lot less wastage sometimes as well. So it's about balance, I think, is really key. And I think, as I've always advocated, it's not about trying to do everything at once. It's about just taking a small step, and every small step is a step. It's a way forward. And so I think sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming to think, well, I'm not doing enough. But I think if you're doing something, that's really positive, and you'll learn from others how to do more as well. And I think just looking at how to, I guess, promote the biodiversity, it is, all the research, there is a lot of evidence-based research and support for it, and scientific support. So it's not kind of maybe this will work, it's quite a factual thing that it will. So I think to be able to support that and really, champion it is really key to be able to move forward. Yeah, absolutely. Chef Megha, you've done that in your restaurant and bought Future 50 Foods. Would you have any other advice to add to chefs looking at this as well?
No, I think Chantelle pretty much summed it up. And I think the biggest advantage of using Future 50 foods that are native to your country is that you considerably end up bringing your costs down. And which is why you can also, and I would just tell the chefs that even if your restaurant pricing is high, if you are putting Future 50 foods on the menu, don't price them as high as your normal dishes. Price them a little lower, which is what we did. We just to encourage people, the Future 50 food dishes were the cheapest on our menu. Just to encourage people to buy them. And apart from that, I think we don't really have to stick to these 50 foods exactly. Like, if there is a particular kind of spinach that you want and you're not able to find it, then swap it with another kind of spinach. Or, if you're using, if you want to use cowpeas, but cowpeas are not available, then swap it with some other lentils or some other pulses that are available in your country. Future 50 foods doesn't really mean just these 50 foods. It means everything in that particular family. So I think that is really important that chefs should be aware of. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's key. I mean, when we think about this, people go, oh, so you want to go from just to 50 foods, but isn't there, 30,000 ingredients? Well, I kind of go, it's really true. But if you start thinking of 30,000 ingredients, it becomes like overwhelming. And so the idea, I think, is when people hear that, 60% of the food that we eat is coming from 4 things. And when you look at, a supermarket and you see what's actually on sale, the majority of products in there is four things. So if you think about just going to 50, even if we can get that starting point, it just starts to open up people's imagination. And then you can start to go into all different varieties, within crops. So, we on the podcast, there was a lot of conversation around, things like wheat, but then within wheat, that's a whole family of biodiversity. There's so many types of wheat. It's not just like
one type. And so you start to then pull that apart and start to look at the layers, and you look at how it's grown and where it's grown and all these kinds of things. And you get different flavors, and it creates real excitement. So to me, that's really, really cool. And I think that's really important. So I want to, we're coming closer to the time. So I want to know, in terms of diversifying our plates, Dorothy, can you tell us why this is critical for health for people and planet?
Sure. So as we've already mentioned, our food system is based off of just 5 animals and 12 crops, making up 75% of the food system. When we eat the same foods over and over again, we don't get a variety of nutrients. The key to health is getting a wide variety of nutrients. Even though vitamin C, iron, calcium are great, if those are the only ones that you get, you will end up having a disease. And that's what we're actually finding, is that people are eating enough calories, but they're not getting the nutrients that they need because they don't have a wide enough variety of foods. So by getting those wider variety of foods on plates every day, so it's really important to get the nutrients every day. When we get those, even if we say, instead of eating spinach today and, let's say lettuce tomorrow and tomatoes the next day, if all 3 of those are together, each one of those days, it's better for your health. So it's really important to get all of those foods in there to get the nutrients that we need, because even when they're good, if you don't get the wide variety, they're not good enough to help your health. So if we get to eat a wider variety of food, I am personally convinced that we will help significantly decrease non-communicable diseases, understanding that the number one reason for most foods, for most diseases, is actually the food we eat.
Yeah.
So that's the food one. That's the health one and related to the food. And then when it comes to growing them, when we grow the same foods over and over again, we're basically stripping the nutrients from the ground. And we also have to use a lot of chemicals and pesticides in order to keep growing those foods over and over and over again. That further degrades the soil, and it's not good for the health of the soil, and then not good for the health of the crops. So when we grow a variety of different foods using different foods like the cover crops, like beans and cowpeas and things like that, then we enable the soil to get nutritious again on its own. Yeah. But the only way that we'll be able to grow those foods is if we demand those foods. So that's why it's so important for us to grow the demand. And the other thing is, when we grow the same type of food, we're putting our food system at major risk, because if a disease or a pest were to get in that, it would swipe out all of that entire food. But if there was a variety of species, some of those species would survive. So it's really important for the security of our food system to grow a wider variety of foods that are able to grow without water, a variety of climates, underwater, on top of buildings, all these different places, making sure the foods are grown in the right ways and that the right types of foods are eaten, so that we can work together as a system that goes round and round and round, so we can feed the growing population well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I just in my backyard, I'm noticing that, if you just plant the one thing in one spot, the pests and everything just hits it. And so it's very much, you've just got to do it. You see it at a small scale, let alone at a big scale. And so I think it's really critical. And then the soil. Okay, before we close up, I want to just ask you quickly, 30 seconds, favorite Future 50 food and why? I think I know Dorothy's, but I'm going to start with you, Chantelle. I didn't tell you to prepare for this.
Me on the spot.
Yeah.
I'll show you mine.
I would say one of them would be spelt, because I think it's very versatile. It can be used as a grain, it can be used as a flour, it can be used, there's many different ways. And I think it's also really accessible, especially in the UK, it's super accessible.
Perfect. Megha?
I think hemp for me, hemp seeds.
Yeah.
Because again, very versatile. I can make them into a curry. I can make muffins with them. I can make them into a chutney or a dip. I can crust meats with them. So hemp.
Awesome. I haven't tried cooking with hemp yet. I'm gonna have to. I've tried spelt. Dorothy?
Delicious.
Okay, I'm going to choose one that's not accessible. So my favorite is Bambara groundnuts. So I think maybe Lorna knows it. I know Chef Michael knows it. And the reason why I'm choosing it is, one, I love peanuts and they taste like peanuts. But Also, they're a magical food. They have protein, fiber, fat, and carbohydrates, and they can grow with hardly any water. They help decrease soil erosion on their own, and they bring nitrogen from the air into the soil. So they're like the magical, magical food. So in my dreams, we open up a sustainable, wonderful supply chain of Bambara groundnuts that goes into Knorr products, replacing anything peanuts. I'm telling you, everything has peanuts in it in the Netherlands. So if we did that, we would really, I swear we would save the world by changing what's on our plate. So that's my favorite. So you look out for the variety of Knorr with Bambara groundnuts.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for all the work that you're doing as well. And I know being a chef at the moment is not the easiest in many parts of the world. There's lots of lockdowns coming and going, and that makes it very hard to run a business. And so it's great. Really appreciate you making the time to join us today, and also to keep advocating and really focusing on these bigger issues amongst everything else that you're doing. So super grateful for you to join. Just in terms of just takeaways and a little bit of so we really do want you to think about creating and sharing a recipe that swaps an ingredient for a Future 50 food this year on this World Good Day. So ideally on the 19th, we want people to share, but Dorothy said it can be any time between the 19th and the end of the month, I think. So there's a bigger time if the 19th is busy for you, but just really share it on your platforms, put those hashtags in. There's a chance there to win a new laptop if that's of interest to you. And I know many chefs have so many recipes. This is not hard. They have, because I think I was asking Megha about a recipe just the other day, and she said, give me 5 minutes. And then she came back with 3 different recipes and showed me 3 different options. And I was like, oh, now, and I was talking with Barbara, and we're both like, now we're really hungry. And now we can't decide.
Yeah, I want to live with Megha. I want to live with Megha.
We wanted to eat this food that she's just like, okay, give me 5 minutes. And then bang. And I know so many of you can do that. So please think about getting involved. Use your voice to really amplify and really raise the awareness. And I think what's really great about what Dorothy and the team at Knorr are doing is they're saying, you know what, we're in this, we're doing it, but we want you guys to use your voice. And you don't even need to mention us. You can just talk about the issues. And I think that's part of the thing. It's about amplifying the issue and getting people to change the way they eat. And if they change the way they eat, some people will eat in your restaurant, they'll buy from local farmers. Some people will engage with Unilever in there, or others, you know, that's what changes the system. You know, that's how we get that out there. So really keen for you to get involved in that. There's a whole point, there's some links in there in terms of all the information. Also on the podcast 3 episodes are out. We've got 3 more coming out. It comes out every Monday. I'd love it if a few people would go on and give us some love hearts on that little button. That's always helpful. Hit a subscribe. It always helps us. But, you know, just share it with people. I know there's so many people that have listened to it when they're going for a run or they're thinking, and it just helps stimulate different ideas, stimulate thinking about crops in different ways. And so please feel free to share that. Thank you to the team from Crop Trust. And yeah, I think just remember what Fabrice started our talk with in talking about art. And I think, you know, it was a really good reminder of some of the challenges that we face, but also on some of the ways in which we can get involved in really driving change. So hopefully this has been a good discussion. It's been great to see lots of people from all over the world in the chat, to see questions coming in. Oh, I see there's a lot more questions, and we're just coming to a close. Okay, so just a couple of things there. We'll try and answer you guys. So see a chef instructor in Calgary teaching nutrition, preserving to 180 students. They're going to try and introduce a dietary challenge in their class for students to look at, featuring some of the Future 50 foods. Awesome. Chef Akram from Tunisia, he's talking about the history of dishes and how historians can help us discover a lot of plants and ingredients. Thank you. There's a couple of other questions here. Thank you, Claude. I saw your question earlier. Really good idea, and we'll take that up. and also the expectations of Chefs Manifesto on food media and shaping the global conversation. I think the food media, I think chefs' voice is the food media in so many ways now. And so how chefs do that is really, really critical in what you talk about around biodiversity. And there are resources that we can share with you. So I'm going to call it there. I like to finish on time, but thank you so much. We've gone right to the end. Really good to chat and good to see so many from the community around, to have you guys on screen. But thank you. We'll share this on our Facebook page. And so if you want to share it with people who couldn't join, if you know students or other chefs in your kitchen that want to listen, please feel free to share it out. Thank you, everyone. And look forward to seeing those amazing dishes on World Eat for Good Day. And
yes,
seeing some more subscribers on the next podcast episode. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Paul.
Bye. Thanks, Rodrigo. Thanks, Lorna. Thanks, Megha.